There was a man in the lobby. I'd never expected to be there. He wore a fancy, expensive-looking suit, smoked a large-looking cigar, and typed something into a phone half-heartedly. The reason he surprised me was he was a congressman, Jim Al Gore Millisk, a staunch supporter of human rights, activist against global warming, and a great speaker on peace. This guy was the opposite of what you'd call controversial, and I'm a literal criminal, so I'd never expected to see him in my lobby. My name is Quentin Lorreno. I'm somewhat of a middleman in the criminal underworld. I mediate the crime families. I arrange diplomatic marriages. I keep things civil. But above all, I host auctions. Art is a tastefully wonderful medium of laundering money, and hosting both underworld and legal auctions is kind of my speciality. And I also recover and sell cursed artifacts. So, when a congressman, a widely uncontroversial one, walked into my lobby, I was both concerned, confused, and bewildered. But business, even in the artifact black market, was business, so I deal with him either way. I concluded my meeting with my client and stepped out to greet the man waiting in the lobby. "Hello, I'm Quentin Lorreno," I introduced, extending a hand. He shook it and gave me his trademarked freedom smile. "What brings you to the Lorreno auction house?" He tensely looked around then, eyeing my co-workers, my assistant Stephen, my 2 security agents, Matt and Oster, and then back at me. "I have something." He picked up a large-looking briefcase, covered in leather, from the floor. "You may be interested in." I sighed. "I've got no time for political brochures or data papers here. This place isn't exactly what you'd call legal, but you didn't hear that from me." I really emphasised that last part. "You are Jim Millisk, yes?" "This is true," he informed. "Can we talk in your office? I think this would really concern you." Now, things were getting interesting. He was no ordinary congressman. I could see that now. There was a certain air of confidence by the way he spoke, something old-fashioned, and it seemed too old for his age. I beckoned for him to follow, entered my little office, and took a seat. "Sit, please." I gestured to the sofa. "Not now," he replied, "but let me show you what I have to offer." With that, he opened his mouth, lifted a hand, and plunged it inside his throat, searching around for something. Now, in my line of work, I was used to seeing the intense and bizarre, but the spontaneity of the action happened so fast I could barely process it. But after 10 seconds or so, he produced a key, practically stabbed it into the briefcase, and opened it. Laid in plush velvet reds and encased in glass was a rib. "What's this?" "The rib of St. Paul," Jim informed, smiling a bit too wide for my liking. "I hear a client of yours has been collecting them." This was a misinterpretation. "St. Paul the Apostle?" I asked, confused. I had a very rich client who was indeed collecting the ribs of a saint named Paul. "You misunderstand. My client is interred with the bones of St. Paul the Oracle." Paul the Oracle was a completely different guy. Completely different storyline. I don't have time to explain. "This is the bones of the Oracle," Congressman Jim insisted. "You can even have your canary inspect it if you have one." Canary, those able to sense and validate sources of mysticism, power and oddity. "I have one," I answered. I cracked the door open and called for Oster. She entered the office soon after, bewildered. "Is that Congressman Millisk?" The congressman nodded and shrugged. I asked her if the oracle bone was legitimate. She reached out a hand and touched it. Her eyes went fiery for a second, and she nodded, confirming. "Dr. Gilmore's going to pay a fortune for this." "Aster, no names, come on," I reminded. I turned to the client. "So, what's your price?" "Do not panic," he began, "but to understand, I must remove my clothes." And before we could say another word, Jim Millisk of the US Congress tore at his chest and removed his skin. His stretchy skin, hair and face moved rapidly, and he threw it over his head as simple as one might pull off a t-shirt, and by the end of it we were left face to face, staring at a scaly, reddish-brown beast with a frilled chameleon-like head. Our mouths, both, gaped open. In essence, he was a lizard man, Asta gasped. I am Astetsky, he corrected, gesturing around wildly, as if he had expected us to already know. You know, some people consider lizard man to be a slur. 2 tongues leapt from his jaws, and he breathed in air, relieved. You do not know how hot skin suits can get. I had heard tales of the Sketsky peoples. They, on Earth, were few in number, but their cunning wit and penchant for science gave them great power. I'd only encountered a few, but found that they were not to be trifled with, especially Stetsky crime families. Now that was one thing I wouldn't miss. So, what do you want? And this better be good, I decided. Last time I messed with a Sketsky, I lost 3 crates worth of artifacts. I don't come from a Sketsky gang. By the way, my name isn't Jim. It's Takani. Actually, call me Jim. He laughed at that, shrill and piercing. It wasn't that funny. No, I'm actually a prior in the Sketsky Confederacy. There's a fracking site I need destroyed, and you people seem excellent for the job. You want us to destroy a fracking site? I inquired, confused. Fracking, the use of pumping poisonous chemicals into the earth to create cracks in the ground and used to quickly extract oil, was not one I'd ever imagined getting into. Why? Jim extracted a map from his throat and pointed to somewhere in the middle of Texas. A Natum sleeps there, underground. Now I understood. Natums were the hive colonies of the Stetsky. Their people evolved and gained civilization more than 12,000 years ago, but the Ice Age forced them into hibernation. Only a few Sketsky had been awoken, and when they found human society, they opted to merely wait us out and reclaim the Earth when, as they claimed, global warming forced us out. Global warming would also trigger the Sketsky's Natum chambers into awakening, so the time of Sketsky-human coexistence was growing near. There would be conflict, and as a result, the Sketsky and human government uncharacteristically opposed global warming. Now, the fracking site, if it remained, would no doubt discover the Natum, and, as Jim explained, would poison the Natum, massacring over 100,000 Sketsky. And no doubt, this would lead to war. I understand, I murmured, extending a hand. I accept this offer. I asked why he couldn't do it. Jim explained that the Sketsky were undergoing a massive political upheaval, and the site had barely been noticed. And so he shook on it, stood, and Jim started to put his suit back on. This is when Matt, my other security agent, charged into my office, gun in hand, slamming Jim across the face and pinning him against the wall. A lamp knocked over, nearly breaking, and so did a number of good lock charms that would certainly be ruined. Matt had this look of rage on his face. "Are we working with a lizard man, sir?" he snapped, looking at me and tightened his chokehold on Jim. Jim hissed, "Okay, first of all, that's literally a slur." Asta shushed him. "Lizardmen killed my brother," Matt growled. "They're all violent freaks, the lot of them. Or do you forget our last few encounters with the Sketke family?" The chokehold was clearly having no effect on Jim. "Okay, first of all, that's a hasty generalization. Don't be a bigot. Not all of us are violent, you know." Jim looked around for help, but I didn't know what to do. Most of us play pretty passive roles in the scientific community, and most of us really enjoy art. I personally have even switched to an all-vegetarian diet. This only seemed to enrage Matt more. "Lies! I'm sure you lizardman government impersonators want to destroy us all." I decided to act. "Matt, put him down," I ordered. I looked sharply into his eyes, and he did. "If you haven't seen the news, Jim's actually against climate change. And for God's sake, stop being racist." "We are Sketsky," Jim reminded. "Great Keon! Coolidge was nicer than you, and he lived in the 1920s. Matt looked at Asta next. "You agree with this? Are we really going to be working for a Sketsky?" Asta shrugged. "I dated a Sketsky once, you know. Very artful people, very potent." "Exactly," Jim cheered. "I'll be leaving now." And Jim put his fleshy skin back on and walked out. "Asta, Matt, "We're doing this," I announced. "I'll have Stephen book us tickets, and the 4 of us will leave tomorrow. And Matt, despite what you think, the Skeksis aren't all bad." "If—" He mumbled something I couldn't decipher. "If you say so." I sighed as I dismissed them. I called Stephen over and sent him off to deal with tickets and a spell to get us through airport security. I had other things to manage, and I decided on contacting the client who wanted the rib. We settled on a more than fair price, and that was the moment I truly decided on the mission. Stephen frolicked in an hour later, showing the tickets and handing me our luggage, then casting his spells on it. I always made it to a point to actually witness a spell cast, since my last caster betrayed me and left me in the middle of the Paris catacombs. The day passed. I went to sleep, and the next morning found myself on a plane with a team, each of us studying the maps on what photographs were available. By 1:45, we were in the middle of nowhere, Texas, hidden among a brush of trees, binoculars looking at the site from a distance. Whatever company responsible had only begun construction. There were a few security guards, but the majority were construction workers and half a dozen geologists. "Stephen, what's the plan?" I asked. "I'll cast Veil on us, and then we sneak in." He took a few squares of something and handed it. "This is Ectobomb, highly dangerous, but I've enchanted it not to damage the living. We stick it all over, leave, and watch it go boom." I nodded. Stephen always got things done. I turned to Asta next. "Can you verify the datum?" She reached out into her ether, and goosebumps emerged. "Yeah, thousands. More. I can hear their minds, dreaming, sleeping." We hadn't been tricked. We were there. I was about to tell Stephen to cast and move when Matt raised a hand. "Wait." He pointed, and I looked through my binoculars. There was a Skeksis, flanked by 2 guards, being moved from tent to trailer. "You think he's captured?" "Yeah," I nodded. "Edit the plan. Me and Asta will free the Skeksis. Matt, Stephen, you know what to do." Stephen cast a spell, and a feeling of nausea and euphoria washed over me. We could see one another, but the sight wouldn't be able to. The journey down was painless, and very soon we were in the midst, walking past unsuspecting workers and employees. We split soon. I and Asta planted our explosives, and there, I pointed to the trailer, the serpent head, oddly not a slur, had been taken to. We entered, only to see the beast in the centre, sitting cross-legged in a chair, sipping a glass of wine. He certainly didn't look captured. I yelped as a pain shot through my head, and suddenly I saw myself in the reflection of a mirror on the opposite side of the room. "What the?" The Skeksis threw the glass down, shattering it. Soldiers entered the room, more than I'd seen before. "I knew someone would come to intervene," the Skeksis bemoaned. "Who sent you?" "You really are embodying the stereotype," I noted. The guards behind us forced us to our knees, our weapons tossed aside. "We won't tell you." "And why the hell are you fracking here?" Asta continued. "You'd be killing your own people." The Skeksis rose from his seat, colours changing from a soft green to a darker red. "Too long have the Skeksis waited for humanity to die. The Confederacy is weak. I," he hissed for effect, "alone must do what must be done." I turned to the guards. "Why are you all helping him?" They shrugged and pointed out he had offered them safe haven and money. "Now." He kneeled in front of us, still taller than our bodies. "Who sent you?" "No one," I replied, smiling. "And we're about to stop this whole operation. Got bombs in every corner." He looked into my eyes and smiled. "Wrong." He snapped his 3-clawed fingers, and Matt was dragged into the room. Where was Stephen? "Screw you, lizardhead," Matt snapped, eyeing the beast. "I told you, we should never have trusted Jim." "Tekani sent you," the beast snapped. "Of course he did." "And who exactly are you?" Asta protested. "I am Amreta Khan Soktal," he hissed. "But you may call me." He thought for an agonizingly long moment. "Bob." What was with the one-syllable monikers? And where the hell was Stephen? "It is time for the Skeksis to rise again," Bob reiterated. "Our time should be now, when the Skeksis realise the human operation has massacred an atom. They will reveal themselves to prevent chaos, and then I will rise amongst inevitable chaos to lead our people into glorious revolution. I rolled my eyes. Okay. I also noted the lack of hissing in the speech. Tell me, agents of Takani, have you seen the inside of a Natum? I shook my head. Let me show you. And then we were off, soon finding ourselves walking deep into a pit, which soon became a cave, and then a structure. Organic, breathing, dripping pods lined the walls, and pulses of something connected each pod like neurons and nerves in a body. The statue of an ancient, massive Stetsky lifted a gold spear up into the air. All the Stetsky slept within the pods. Eyes eerily open, dreaming open dreams. Was I going to die then? Alone with my team? The thought itself terrified me, and I shuddered in fear. Matt, I whispered. Where the hell is Stephen? Bob's head turned, and his jaws clashed, revealing thousands of sharp pointed teeth. Who is Stephen? My already scared self increased then. Now I was risking it all. My team, Stephen. I felt goosebumps on my skin, fear brewing within me. And then, as if fate befell us, the earth shook and rocks came tumbling down. The organic living lights of the Natum flashed brightly, and then darkened, confusing our opponents. That's when I struck out, striking the first guard in the head, then seizing his weapon. I fired blindly, hoping not to massacre my friends. They did the same, but we were vastly outnumbered, until Stephen appeared like mist to an early morning day. And not just one Stephen, but dozens marched forwards, an army of old, librarian-esque men. That's Stephen, I informed. What the hell? Bob snarled. I fired my weapon while he was distracted, hitting him several times in the chest. The army of old men picked up rocks and threw them, and a volley of stones fell upon the men, though keen-eyed magic immunified us. The guards fled the scene, breaking through the army of Stephens and out of the Natum. Bob snarled and charged towards me, arms open, claws out. He hissed and snarled, and was quickly met by several rounds of the machine gun Matt had equipped himself with. Screw you, Bob snipped, before falling to the floor, dead. Asta reached out and felt him. Yeah, definitely dead all right. The army of old men collapsed into one. Stephen, I shouted. You saved us. That was plan B, he pointed out. It should have been plan A, Matt joked. We all laughed at that. And so the day was done. We dragged the corpse of Bob, destroyed the fracking site, and enchanted our way through airport security. And before the day was done, we were back. I was in my office with Matt and Asta. God knows where Stephen went. Meeting a very satisfied Jim. Thank you, he bluntly announced, reaching in for a hug. I took it. He walked over and hugged Asta, who confusingly took it. Matt opted for a handshake. And your prize? He handed me the rib of St. Paul the Oracle. Dr. Gilmore's going to pay a lot for this one, Asta snickered. Asta, we can't give away the names of our clients, I reprimanded. I turned to Jim. What are you going to do about... I gestured to the dead Bob on the floor. We will probably put him on trial, as an example against rebellion, Jim informed. And then eat him. Probably. We looked at him in confusion. That was a joke. Matt spoke next, surprising us all. Hey man, Jim, I'm really sorry about earlier. He patted Jim on the shoulder. You really helped us, and the world, with a fracking site. I guess not all is, Stetsky are bad. I'm going to be open-minded from now on. Open-minded enough to go to the festival of Zaphon? He hopefully asked. Asta cut off Matt's confirmation. Don't go to the festival of Zaphon. It's a mess every year. This is true, Jim agreed. Now I must go back to being Jim the US Congressman and fight climate change. Perhaps I will see you again. Perhaps not. You have fallen into the favour of the House of Stetok. And Jim put his human flesh back on like clothing, and we were incredibly disgusted. And out he went, without a care in the world. I dismissed my team, and settled down, inspecting the rib with a well-trained Asta. You know Paul the Oracle was a Stetsky, right? Asta inquired, handling and turning the rib. There was text on it, ancient, one I would need Stephen to translate. I nodded. I had Stephen read up on Poe. I wonder what someone like Dr. Gilmore would want with a saint of the Stetsky. I shrugged. We're just the middlemen, Oster. That was how things went. It's not our business to know why people want certain things, but I do hope that one day man and Stetsky finally live together in peace, without the prejudices of the old. Matt's really restored my faith in that, truly. Asta only nodded to that, feeling the holy power of the rib in her hands. Perhaps, truly one day, there would be a world of freedom, of equality and justice, one where even the serpentine peoples and fiery ancients of old and us may unite as one. But today was not that day. Today was just another day as a middleman. Such were things in the house of Lorreno.